Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom.
In our top story, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that Hamas continues to violate the U.S.-brokered ceasefire in Gaza. This comes after jihadi fighters crossed the yellow line and opened fire on Israeli troops. In a separate incident, dozens of terrorists trapped in tunnels under the IDF-controlled city of Rafah attempted to escape. The IDF conducted a 24-hour manhunt, which resulted in the elimination of 11 terrorists and the arrest of 6 others who were transferred to Israel's Shin Bet security service for interrogation. Turning to Lebanon, the IDF targeted and assassinated Hezbollah's second-in-command, along with 4 of his bodyguards, in precision strikes in Beirut. Jerusalem repeatedly warned the Lebanese armed forces that the terror group was rearming and planning further attacks on the Jewish state in violation of the ceasefire agreement. The Lebanese government's failure to disarm and dismantle the Iranian-backed terror group left Jerusalem with no choice but to resume targeted assassinations of terror leaders hundreds of miles away.
Zoran Mamdani, the newly elected mayor of New York, was greeted by U.S. President Trump when he visited the White House. Trump has called Mamdani a Jew hater and a radical lunatic leftist. Despite the president's objections to Mamdani's social jihadist ideology, he invited the mayor-elect to the Oval Office. Mamdani accused Trump of funding an Israeli genocide in Gaza, a false accusation that both Israel and the United States have adamantly rejected. The meeting was held just days after hundreds of masked pro-Hamas protesters surrounded a New York synagogue, preventing Jews from entering the house of worship.
The oil-rich Gulf state of Qatar has invested upwards of $20 billion to spread Islamist ideology on U.S. college campuses. The Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, known by the acronym ISCAP, has published a report on Qatar's funding of jihad in America. ISCAP's executive director, Dr. Charles Asher Small, said Qatar's efforts are linked to the Muslim Brotherhood's plan to destroy the West from within. Small said Doha has spent billions of dollars in American schools, including kindergartens, primary schools, high schools, colleges, universities, and cultural institutions. He said Qatar has used its influence and power to promote its Islamist ideology. It is important to note that half of this money, a whopping $10 billion, went to Cornell University to lay the groundwork for violent anti-Israel protests that were staged after the October 7th Hamas massacre in Israel.
Israel's Mossad security agency has confirmed that several foiled Hamas attacks on European soil were planned in Qatar. The secretive spy agency has thwarted dozens of attacks on Jewish and Israeli targets abroad. Now it's reporting that investigations carried out with its European counterparts have led to dozens of arrests and the seizure of weapons intended for use by Hamas terrorist cells. The Mossad confirmed that weapons recently seized in Vienna belonged to Hamas operative Mohammed Naim, the son of senior Hamas leader Bassem Naim. The father and son met in Qatar in September. The Mossad said the timing of the meeting suggests possible involvement of Hamas leadership in authorizing and directing terror activity in Europe.
Italian police faced off against a crazed mob outside of a Maccabi Tel Aviv basketball game in Bologna last week. The bloodthirsty crowds gathered in Piazza Marjorie, which they named Piazza Gaza, and marched towards the arena chanting Zionists out of Bologna. The anarchists lit trash cans on fire. They threw large stones, firebombs, and fireworks at police officers who deployed water cannons and smoke bombs to disperse the mob. This is just the latest incident of Israeli athletes being threatened internationally. In October, Israeli fans were banned from attending a soccer match against the UK's Aston Villa club.
Israel's Rafael Advanced Defense Systems has signed a contract to expand serial production of the Iron Dome defense systems. The deal is estimated to be worth billions of dollars. The Israeli-developed Iron Dome is being manufactured in collaboration with the United States. Its multi-tiered defense array is designed to protect against short and medium-range projectiles, including rockets, missiles, and drones. The agreement specifies that Rafael will supply Israel's Ministry of Defense and the IDF with large quantities of Iron Dome interceptor missiles. This agreement was made possible when Congress approved an $8.7 billion aid package to Israel in April. $5.2 billion of this aid is earmarked to strengthen Israel's air defense systems, including the Iron Dome, David Sling, and the new laser beam. These systems demonstrated outstanding performance with exceptional interception rates during the recent wars with Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis, and others.
In sports news, Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is calling for the NFL to play in Jerusalem. The National Football League has held games in dozens of international venues, including Dublin, London, Berlin, and Madrid. Now players are calling for an opportunity to play in the holy city of Jerusalem. Tagovailoa, an evangelical Christian and a native of Hawaii, unabashedly called to play the game in the Jewish state. In 2017, Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, built 3 regulation football fields in Jerusalem. The sports complex hosts Israel's national American football team, as well as its men's and women's national flag football teams.
On the medical front, Israeli researchers from the Weizmann Institute of Science have discovered a new class of immune-activating molecules that could help the body's immune system fight cancer. The study was published in the scientific journal Cell. This discovery could have broad applications for the treatment of pancreatic and lung cancers that are less responsive to immunotherapies. The study was released just 5 months after the Iranian ballistic missile directly hit the laboratory, destroying at least 70% of the group's data. The attack inspired researchers to improvise using innovation to continue the research with even more conviction.
Israel's civil administration has announced the expropriation of 445 acres of land in Samaria for the preservation and development of the archaeological site of Sebastia. This ancient metropolis, located near the biblical city of Shechem, is believed to have been the capital of the northern Israelite kingdom in the 9th and 8th centuries BCE. It features evidence from the Iron Age, and its layers of history date back over 3,000 years, from the kings of Israel to the Roman Empire, Crusaders, and Ottomans. It still holds ancient walls and an Iron Age palace believed to be associated with the biblical kings of Israel. The site was previously under the jurisdiction of the Palestinian Authority, but has been repeatedly desecrated, looted, and neglected. Jerusalem's decision to reclaim the land will allow people from all over the world to access this magnificent archaeological site.
Dozens of South African Christian leaders visited Israel in a show of solidarity with the Jewish state. Since the Hamas massacre in Israel on October 7, 2023, the government in Pretoria has falsely accused Israel of genocide in Gaza and has vilified Israel on the world stage. Reverend Kenneth Mashoa, founder of the African Christian Democratic Party, said the apartheid label is inaccurate in Israel and morally offensive. He said this comparison insults the memory of what South Africans endured under real apartheid. Sean Nagoyev, the chairman of South African Friends of Israel, told the Jewish News Syndicate that Christianity is the dominant religion in South Africa, and the majority of South Africans want to engage with Israel, not isolate it. He said Israel has millions of friends in South Africa.
The Israeli Knesset has approved a plan to bring the remaining members of the Bnei Manasseh, or the sons of Manasseh, back to Zion. This once lost tribe of the House of Israel was expelled from the Levant nearly 2,700 years ago, but they never lost their faith or desire to return to their promised land. The Bnei Manasseh currently reside in the northeastern Indian states of Mizoram and Manipur. The first phase of the plan will see the return of 1,200 Israelites to the Holy Land by 2026. They will receive immigration and absorption assistance, including Hebrew language and skills training to assist the new immigrants in education and employment placement in Israel. The second phase of the plan aims to bring the remaining 4,600 Israelites home by 2030. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich hailed the Knesset's decision, saying that it fulfills a long-held yearning for Zion.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Rabbi Tuly Weisz. He's the founder of Israel 365. Rabbi Tuly, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Tell our viewers a little about what is Israel 365.
Israel 365 is a digital platform that connects Christians all around the world to what's happening here in Israel on a daily basis. Our foundational scripture is Deuteronomy 11:12 that says that God's eyes are upon the land of Israel every day from the beginning of the year until the end of the year. So Israel 365 is your viewers, their way to connect with Israel every day of the year.
You work with Christian Zionists, and you work with Christians who love the state of Israel. And recently, Tucker Carlson said the most despicable people are Christian Zionists. They're like worse than jihadis or communists. What was your response to that?
Well, his father is a well-known Christian Zionist, was a well-known Christian Zionist. So, I mean, I think it's crazy. I think he's just out of control. And but the people who we deal with are proud to be Christian Zionists, and they don't take Tucker Carlson very seriously. I mean, he's literally, unfortunately, he's really just seems like he has an axe to grind against Israel and the Jewish people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what we're seeing in America is that these outbursts are actually marginalizing him. How do you think the future of relations with Christians in America is going to look?
It all depends. It depends on how much Christians are passing it along, their love for Israel, to the next generation. We know that in the Jewish community, we have so many opportunities around the Shabbat table or just to pass along the traditions to the next generation. And so the Christians who are more connected to the Hebrew roots and take Shabbat seriously, so they do ensure that their children are connected, or if they bring their kids to Israel, that's really what it comes down to. But if they just take it for granted that because the grandparents loved Israel, we can't assume that that's going to necessarily get passed on to the next generation. You see it in the Jewish community. Their grandchildren are not as connected. Even the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors are not connected to Israel, or maybe even leading some of the protests against Israel. So we can't take the next generation for granted, and we have to really be deliberate as parents or even as grandparents to pass our love for Israel on to our children and grandchildren.
You wrote an amazing book called Universal Zionism, and it's simply about getting people more involved with the Zionist enterprise. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, so after October 7th, really was grappling with, there was so much going on a military level, but even more importantly, perhaps, on the informational war against Israel, or the propaganda war against Israel. So many forces trying to pull their countries, their nations, and their individual people away from Israel. And so I sat down to write this book because I really believe that we're at this critical juncture where we can turn things around for the better. And Universal Zionism is tracing the progression of Zionist history from what we call political Zionism, that's Theodor Herzl, through the stage called religious Zionism, where there was sort of this body that was created and we infused within it a soul. Why are we here? What are we doing here? And then we're here because God gave us the land of Israel. And that's the stage of religious Zionism. However, religious Zionism, which I identify with, but to some extent it's kind of petering out. It's not necessarily expanding as much as it could be. And I argue in the book that universal Zionism is the next phase of Zionism, where the Zionist movement has to turn outwards in order to attract new people, and especially non-Jews, because Zionism is not only a blessing for the Jewish people here in Israel, but what I say in the book is that Zionism is as much of a blessing to a Christian in Kentucky as it is for a Jew in Jerusalem. And so universal Zionism is the phase that we're in right now, where we're meant to spread, to be a light into the nations, and we have to, all of us, especially Jews, have to understand that we really have a responsibility to reach out and spread our love for Israel to the nations of the world.
I think a lot of people understand the horror of October 7th, but not a lot of people understand the blessings that have happened during the war since then, the miraculous victories, the wiping out of Iran, the wiping out of Hezbollah. These are amazing miracles where God went before us and battled. Do you think Christians are recognizing God's work in the land of Israel during the last 2 years?
I hope so, because it's pretty clear what's going on. What they might not be aware of, and what I point out in the book, Universal Zionism, is that in addition to these great military miracles that are happening, there's a religious revival that's happening in Israeli culture, starting with the IDF soldiers. And we talk a lot about that the combination of the military miracles, the religious revival that's happening here in Israeli society, really are what we're poised to now expand and to take the miracles that are happening in Israel and expand those, because really the number one blessing throughout the Bible is the return of the people of Israel to the land of Israel, which is meant to unleash great blessings on not Israel, but the world. And for anybody whose country stands against those blessings, you're blocking God's plan, and you're going to be blocking God's blessings. And by working together, Jews and Christians, we're opening up God's blessings for the world. And that's really what universal Zionism is all about.
It says in the Bible that God will go before the people of Israel in battle with furious vengeance and anger, so that the whole world will know he's the one true God of Israel. And we see that with Jews in Israel right now. We're seeing this incredible revival. Do you expect that revival to happen in the Christian world?
It is. It really is. There is a major revival going on. Christians are buying Bibles for the most amount that in recorded history. Young people are finally coming back to church, which is a wonderful thing. And what we want as Jews is that Christians to not become Jews, but to really embrace their own faith and to become better Christians. Because if you're a better Christian, you're going to be more connected to the Bible, more connected to God, and more connected to Israel.
Rabbi Tuly, there are literally millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
Well, I would just like to say that if you feel that you want to be a part of this movement for Israel and the world, for the nations of the world, check out Universal Zionism. Either check out the book on Amazon, or it's universal-zionism.com, and join the movement.
Thank you, Rabbi Tuly, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now the truth from Zion.
Iran is in a water emergency. In late July, the government closed offices and schools across Tehran and other provinces to save water and power. Households were told to cut use and to expect rolling shutoffs. Reservoirs around the capital are unusually low. Many wells have been pumped too much, too hard for too long. On November 7, 2025, the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, warned that if rains do not arrive by late November, the government will impose strict water rationing in Tehran and could even evacuate parts of the city. Officials say the dams feeding the capital are at their lowest levels in 60 years, with the Latian Reservoir reported to be about 9 to 10% capacity. Iranian officials warn that dam levels are low and ask people to cut usage, and they have publicly raised the prospect of rationing and even evacuations if conditions worsen. But warnings are not a plan. The facts on the ground are stark. Lake Urmia, once the largest salt lake in the Middle East, has shrunk massively in the past 2 decades. In dry years, it becomes a salt pan, feeding dust and killing local jobs. In central Iran, the Yuzan-Dairud River that runs through Isfahan often runs dry. Underground, the news is even worse. Overpumping has caused the land to sink in many places. Sinking breaks roads and pipes and cannot be reversed on human timelines. The cause is not a mystery. A fanatical Islamic regime has poured money into missiles, proxy wars, and a rogue nuclear program while neglecting pipes, pumps, canals, and basic enforcement. It treats water as a tool of control, not as a public trust. And that is why the crisis keeps returning. There is a practical way out if priorities change. First, protect drinking water, hospitals, and power plants. Ration honestly and shield low-income households. Second, repair the systems that already exist. In many cities, 1/4 of treated water is lost before it reaches a tap. Third, regulate large users. Meter large farms and factories. Close illegal wells with real compensation. Support the market for what they grow. Replace flood irrigation with modern systems that cut waste by half or more. Fourth, publish the numbers. Show how much water is in each basin, who is using it, and how flows change month by month. Regional models exist. Israel built a diversified system that works in a similar climate. Large-scale desalination to supply cities, a high reuse of treated wastewater for agriculture, strict leak control, and drip irrigation on a national scale. None of this is theory. Israel has even offered to help the people of Iran, but that offer was rejected by the maniacal Shiite regime. The current Iranian rulers are dangerous at home and abroad. They export drones and rockets and import misery. They silence the scientists and the journalists who could help fix this crisis. They turn water into a political weapon and then blame the weather when the taps run dry. A different form of leadership could move quickly to solve these issues. It could redirect money from terrorist militias and a rogue nuclear project into water security. It could pair new desalination facilities on the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman with new pipelines inland. It could reuse most city wastewater on farms. It could invite diaspora engineers and honest investors to help rebuild infrastructure. And it could work with neighbors, including Israel, on shared projects that create jobs in Iran and restore a sense of national pride.
The water crisis in Iran is a direct result of their obsession with financing terror around the world. The tyrants of Tehran care more about spreading terror than their own people.
Iran's water emergency is a test of priorities. It is an opportunity for the government to decide whether it will keep funding confrontation while families are forced to store water at home, or whether it will finally fix the basics. The tools are available. The costs are manageable. The gains are immediate. What has been missing is a government willing to serve its citizens. From Jerusalem, this is the truth from Zion. Up next, the ICEJ Report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Since Israel was brutally attacked by Hamas on October 7th of last year, the demand for mental health care in Israel has surged. This is especially true for those suffering with some form of post-traumatic stress. Israeli experts are estimating that 1 in 3 individuals impacted by the conflict will grapple with trauma symptoms for years to come.
Since 1980, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem has been a voice of Christian support for Israel and connected the global church to the land of the Bible. Headquartered in Jerusalem, the ICEJ has taken action to stand with Israel by caring for Holocaust survivors, helping Jewish families return home to Israel, providing bomb shelters, fighting anti-Semitism around the world, and by inviting Christians to discover Israel for themselves.
Over the past year, the Christian Embassy has responded to this urgent need by supporting a variety of trauma therapy programs, most notably for emergency first responders and for children. One such initiative is a new recovery home we funded in the Galilee that serves as a haven for those experiencing acute trauma symptoms. The home is now self-supporting and uses creative therapy methods to help people find their balance in life more quickly. Elsewhere, we have sponsored therapeutic horseback riding sessions, as well as therapeutic group retreats for emergency and medical first response teams. The ICEJ recently bought 2 therapy horses, which service many recovering youths and have proven quite successful. A young boy named Erez was held hostage in Gaza for 50 days and managed to survive mentally by remembering his times riding his favorite horse. After his release, Erez was so glad to be back on a horse again. The ICEJ also sponsored special training courses for medical professionals dealing with severely injured patients and Jewish-Arab tensions in the workplace. We also helped to fund renovations of a new trauma recovery center in Jerusalem, as well as provided large protected rooms for group therapy sessions in a resilience center in the south of Israel. These are just some of the ways the Christian Embassy has been helping Israelis overcome the trauma of this difficult war.
After Hamas brutally attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, the ICEJ has been actively standing with Israel and her people through advocacy and urgently needed aid projects. Now is the time for Christians to turn their love for Israel and the Jewish people into real action as never before. Your donation will help deliver bomb shelters to at-risk areas, provide necessary supplies for first responders, support affected citizens with trauma care, and will eventually help rebuild these devastated communities. Visit ICEJUSA.tv to donate online or call 1-800-910-6355 and give your generous gift today.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.